very bad.
Waste of a good shoe.
It's a waste of a good shoe, but you know, you might have lost the other one.
An open-toed sandal done
That
well.
was essentially why you were using the shoe as a mug. What you were trying to say by using the shoe as a mug, you know? If you just didn't have a mug and you had a shoe, then
it's
that's
just
one thing.
using
But
it
if you're
for
trying to
words.
make a statement by doing that, then it's, you know, maybe it's...
So it's like Dali's lobster phone. It's not a lobster anymore, it's a phone.
Well, you're right, no, we
But
can
it's still
say
a
that about ready-made objects, but when you've made the object, is it necessarily art, you know? There's a really interesting, now that we're in this toilet scene, there's a really interesting exhibition which was, I think it was like Jonas Dahlberg or something, and he basically had two monitors outside a toilet of the urinal and the toilet. And so you had to take it upon yourself to make the decision as to whether to go inside the loo and be filmed on this, you know. And when you did, because eventually you just think curiosity or Dutch courage or something, German courage, so it was German. Yeah. And then you'd go in, and those of you who were the curios, you know, would go in, and inside the urinal or inside the loo, there was a tiny, tiny little maquette of the urinal, of the loo, stuck on the wall with the CCTV camera pointed towards it. So it wasn't ever going to be you that was filmed.
Oh!
It was just this maquette, and so it was this real blurring of public and private space. And that is not necessarily art either.
Well, it's still everything Big Brother, is that considered
it's surveillance, but it's really challenging for you, and that's not necessarily, it's an intellectual, it's highlighting what you would go through, and it's highlighting a Big Brother Orwellian society, you know, as well as anything else.
But I did a show in a gallery in Newcastle a few years ago, Ragged Gallery, which was part of the Postal Weekend, and my show was in a toilet. There was a whole series of latrine works, and one of the other latrine works downstairs was a girl in the toilet in just her knickers, and she was in there the whole day. You couldn't go into her toilet, but you could go into the one next to it and watch what she was doing in there, because there was a camera on her, and then you could watch it in the toilet next to her. She was just standing there, or sometimes you'd go up to the camera and look at the camera, and she'd come back and she'd stand and she'd move around, and it was like.
But she wasn't using the toilet.
She wasn't actually going to the toilet. So, well, not in the bits that I saw, but maybe she did. But I heard about an actual public toilet. It was genuinely, its function was a public toilet, but they were trying to make it look really nice architecturally. And it was a single unit that was in the middle of a pedestrian street, like almost on a high street. Oh God, I can't remember anything to say where it was. But on the outside, it was mirror glass. So when you walk past, you could just see your own reflection. On the inside, it was Polaroid, so you could see through. You could see everyone on the street. And I remember the headline was, "Would you use this toilet?"
Yes, you would, absolutely.
I mean, the fact is they can't see you, but just because you can see them, you automatically think, I can't do
It is very strange.
it.
It's very strange. I had to do a similar thing in a cubicle where I used to take my children to children's swimming, and all the other mums used the changing room, and I had to go in the sauna to change. And that had a big glass door which you could see through, well, maybe not the other one. So they told me. And I was changing one day, and this group of people came around on a tour of the place, and they all stood outside looking at this. And I knew intellectually they couldn't see me. It just felt really strange.
It's that blurring of public and private space that I find really interesting. And there's another artist called Natalie Jeremy Jenko, who, you know, the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco is renowned for suicide.
Yeah.
So she was working with the Bureau of Inverse Technology, and she created what she called the suicide box, which was basically a box which monitored vertical movement at speed. And basically there was this massive uproar with the people of California. And they said basically, why aren't you stopping the suicides, and why aren't you intervening? And and she was just like, well, sometimes if pigeons fall too quickly in flight, then it will note something on this suicide box, and note it down in, and she, although it was considered as art, you know, it was not made for that reason at all. It was considered and analysed and judged by artists, but was not art. You know, this was not art. It was what she wanted. Yeah, she wanted to gauge the value of suicide, basically. But you've got to think about, it so consistently blurs public and private space that the bridge, we're not quite sure as to whether the bridge remains a public space or the act has remained a private act. And it's just, you know, and that in itself, it spurs something inside our heads to question whether that's art, because it's slightly existential and because it's slightly, you know, apart from anything else. But actually, she considered it technology rather than art. You know.
So somebody else is kind of getting to your point that it's the observer makes something a piece of art.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd agree. Yeah.
But no, I mean, I was just going back to what we were discussing earlier. If the actual artist themselves kind of denounces something and says this is not art, then I don't know where does that leave us. Whereas, you know, the situation in industry, I would call that a fantastic piece of art.
Yes, exactly.
If the artist themselves says this is not,
I'd agree.
this is not art, then
because the original point must have been, if an artist says this is art, then it is. But as you say, what do you say when they say it isn't?
Sure.
But it's analysed and it's judged and it's, you know, appreciated by artists.
I think if it's been claimed as art, like the non-smoking sign, you know, that's made in a factory. There is no one artist we can say created it. There's no one to actually claim it, so it's up for grabs. It can be claimed by artists, by audiences. It can be claimed by architects, schools, you know, education, whatever. And that's when it can become art. I think it is when it's something like that, like a found object, or something which is so detached from its origins, from its maker. If it's up for grabs, then I think it can be art. But until then, until it's claimed, until it's marked somehow, put into a gallery space, or
do you think it has to go through a process then?
I think it does.
Disengage it.
You're talking about the suicide box, and in fact, there was so much talk by the artistic community about it. It feels to me, from how you described it, that I would actually be quite pleased to go and see this in an artistic context.
Exactly.
You know, so the readings from this machine could make something really, really quite moving. You know,
I mean, here it's something that pulls something into question. I mean, functional or not. I mean, not to go too historical or anything like that, but Nazi Germany during the war, they were using Jewish tombstones as paving for roads. Now, actually, that's just a road. Its function is a road for cars to drive along. But the fact that it was tombstones of the Jewish people that they would use automatically makes that an extraordinarily poignant, moving, disturbing, horrific piece of architecture, engineering, roadworks, whatever you want to call it. I don't consider that a road at all. I consider that a major statement.
See, that comes back to my view that is an accidental piece of art, therefore it's not art.
See, I don't, but the people doing it were making a point about it. They wanted to drive their cars over to
that's making a political statement. That's one function too, a political statement, and probably just
incredibly offensive.
It's to cause offence. But the road itself, I would say, remains non-art until someone takes a photo or documents it.
It's that process that we're talking about. Yeah, it's the process that you go through to get there. So if you're talking about, like I often take photographs of like rust or peeling paint or some kind of something broken in the street. Like I was living in Nunhead just by Peckham, and there was in the street a fridge, you know, like those stand-up fridges that you open like this.
Oh yes.
Like a freezer or something. And it had been slashed and slashed and slashed and slashed, and then left out in the rain. So there was a slight bit of metal inside and this yellow foam. and it was absolutely incredibly beautiful, and it had that horrible fake marble that you get behind professional photographs on the